Hey, what's up guys, Rev here. So on Twitter currently there's this thread going around that's getting a lot of attention, and it's asking people for their VTuber related hot takes. Now, for lack of a better way of putting this, the person who made this is essentially a face cammer who eventually got a VTuber model, and when I went to their stream going over all of this stuff and the related hot takes, they said in this pinned reply that they're not even a VTuber fan, and after listening to their stream, they're not even an anime fan, and unsurprisingly, their takes involving VTubers are not the best. So I thought we'd do a little pro gamer move here and yoink this thread, and since I actually like VTubers and it's something we talk about a lot around here, I thought we could have a more nuanced conversation about these VTuber hot takes, including talking about the hot takes that this person ignored because they simply disagreed with them. And yeah, this is a subjective conversation, so feel free to disagree with whatever I'm saying and share that in the comments section. But without further ado, let's look at some VTuber hot takes. This first one I really like. So it says, there's no such thing as a VTuber community. Your community is only a fraction of what is really out there. Also, you don't need to be a part of a greater community to be a VTuber, especially if it's bringing you resentment towards VTubing. So, the difference between a VTuber community and VTuber culture is something we'll talk about a little later in this video, but they're right. In the most general and literal of a sense, there is a VTuber community of basically just people who have VTuber models, but that overall group of people is so large and fractured that there's no sense of collected values or practices. So what happens is you have a million different fractions of VTubers, so there's no greater community. Now, my biggest advice I could ever give to a VTuber is to appeal to your community. Appeal to your viewers, what you like, and what everyone in your community finds interesting and important. Do not, and the biggest mistake you could ever make, is trying to appeal to a greater VTuber community. Because number one, it's so diverse, what are you appealing to? But it alienates you from what's really important, and that's your identity and your community. The greater community is an issue. So like, for me, I have a VTuber model. I am in all intents and purposes a VTuber, but I do not consider myself a part of the VTuber community. And in terms of who I could relate to in this supposed VTuber community, the English-speaking side, have you seen what's out there? I want no part of that stuff. If I listened to what they had to say, I would have to game end myself right now, right? So I just want to make my own community and focus on that. And if I meet other VTubers along the way, because there's plenty of awesome VTubers out there, including English-speaking ones, if you meet them through that, that's awesome. But you shouldn't have to pretend to be something you're not to appeal to a greater community that often is not even going to care about you. And I think the biggest mistake also people can do is focusing on appealing to other VTubers for that VTuber community. That's why VTweeters learn, they get like a feedback loop where they go, oh, I make some hot take about VTubers and I get 10,000 likes, and I should focus on that because a lot of other VTubers are applauding me. Well, and then they go to their stream and they have 10 viewers, and they don't understand why it's not translating because they're not talking about their actual content or beliefs that they believe. They're trying to appeal to a community that is so fractured and so really unimportant to what you're doing that they kind of miss the whole point of VTubing. So again, if you listen to everything that Western VTubers are saying, you would resent being a VTuber. They find problematic themes everywhere. It would make you hate VTubing. And if you hate VTubing so much, why would you want to be a part of a community? It makes no sense to me. But going on from there, this is another good point. Letting go of IRL responsibilities such as your IRL jobs to become a full-time VTuber is super reckless, especially if you aren't a big indie VTuber or have company backup. More often than not, the person is neither of those two. So this is one of those like reality checks that I wish everyone would have. Like, it's unfair to say, but I would say probably 99%, 95%, even being lenient, of VTubers are not going to make this into a full-time job. You're just not going to produce enough revenue to make it sustainable. And that's the tough reality, but it's the reality you need to be aware of. Make this into a job. Don't start off trying to be a VTuber professionally right from the get-go. You're going to fall flat on your face and you're going to struggle so hard you're probably going to give up instantly. Instead, build it up as a hobby. Do you actually like being a VTuber? Do you actually like streaming and making content? Well, if you do that long enough and you build up yourself, maybe you can find yourself in the special position to make it a full-time job. And that's very rare, and it's okay that you can't get there. That's not something to be ashamed of. It's a very lucky thing to make content for a living. That's a huge privilege, and you have to get, it's not just, your skill and how hard you work, it's luck too. It takes a lot of luck. And you can't just start quitting your job. I've seen VTubers who have one big stream where they make like $100 and the next day they're quitting their job. Well, you know what happens? 3 weeks later, they're begging their boss for their job back because what they were doing was not reflective of how every stream's gonna go, and it wasn't sustainable. You really need to build up a solid foundation. It might take years to do. Trust me on that. As someone who went through that, it took years before I felt like I was in a position where I could treat this like a job. But I did that, treating it like a hobby because I enjoyed making content. So that's that. And the next point says, VTubers need to stop putting all of their worth into their debut stream. Just because you have a debut stream, that doesn't mean you're guaranteed instant success. I've seen too many people do a debut, only to have less than 5 people show up and then immediately quit because of it. So debuts are a huge thing, especially in the West. Well, really, it's big everywhere in the VTuber community, right? But unfortunately, especially in Western VTubing communities, there's like this buildup of your debut. Like, you can't stream until you debut your VTuber model. And I think that is a huge mistake. And people put so much resources into not only their model, but like making lore and things like that. They spend thousands of dollars building up to that first stream. And when they go into it, they put so much pressure on it. Sometimes people unironically just, it's so anxiety inducing, they never actually get around to making their debut because they put so much pressure on it. And if, you have to understand, if you're like some random person with, builds up 100 followers leading up to their debut, you're not going to show up with 1,000 people in your stream. You're going to be lucky to have 10 or 15. And you need to accept that's the reality of starting off in content creation. You're not going to blow up instantly. Only a tiny fraction of VTubers and content creators blow up in their first couple of months. It's so rare. You can't expect that to happen and be disappointed when it doesn't. And that relates to this next one. So stop starting off with a model immediately. You'll see it's hard to get numbers and you won't get back the money for months. Most people who did this graduated a year later. Start easy and invest when Twitch pays you. So the concept of a PNG tuber is so overlooked. That idea is having like a 2D model that you don't even use. Just put a little 2D picture of what you want to be in the corner, or put no picture, have nothing, be a no cam, no picture, nothing, and just stream. Find out if you even like streaming before you spend thousands on a VTuber model that you might not even like. I can't tell you, this is the most painful event I've ever seen in my life. It's when someone builds up their debut stream where they're also debuting their VTuber model, and they get there. They spend thousands on all of the prep, and they go live, and it's a PowerPoint presentation. It's a PowerPoint presentation because their internet's not even good enough to stream. And they didn't know that because they had never streamed before. And I take it from me. My first stream, this was way before I got my VTuber model. It was like back in 2019. My first stream was a PowerPoint presentation. It was terrible. My internet sucked. I ended up just having to do a just chatting stream. I couldn't even play games because my computer was so bad back then. But I didn't put a lot of resources. In fact, I put 0 resources into that. I just wanted to have fun and stream. And I said, well, I don't have the specs for it right now. I'll have to come back in like a year when I have better equipment. And that's it. But if you've built up this much financial investment and time and pressure into your debut and your computer doesn't even work, that's devastating. It's hard to watch. So try streaming, get used to it, get comfortable, and build up some revenue from Twitch over the course of months, and then use that to invest into a VTuber model. So that way, at least you're not out of pocket and you feel like you've gotten comfortable with streaming before this big event. This one says, a lot of VTuber drama comes from people not knowing how to properly communicate. Like, some of you really don't know how to talk to people, and it really shows. And yes, I know it's not always the case, but I think it's also just another way to gain attention and follows. Of course, making drama is a way for people to get attention and clout. Agreed. That's, of course, a part of it. But I will say this, 90% of drama in the VTuber community could be solved by just like DMing someone. That's pretty much it. And when I say VTuber community, we already talked about this. I'm just talking about VTubers in general, like not one specific thing. Like we already talked about this. I just use that interchangeably with VTubers, the way of saying the whole surrounding area of VTubers, right? So yeah, if you just actually DM these people, like when a VTuber feels like they got scammed by an artist, try DMing the artist first. Or why are you making it public in the first place? A lot of these things can be handled privately. Of course, if it doesn't work like that, yeah, you can go public to try to make something happen. But a lot of the personal, petty, interpersonal drama could be solved by two things. Not talking about it publicly, or this. If you don't like a liver, just block and move on. Stop complaining every time they do anything. It's a waste of your time and energy. Also, stop comparing people. Yeah. You know, as one who has seen the horrible effects of RDS, which is a medical condition known as Rev derangement syndrome, simply blocking someone you don't like will do a lot for your mental health. That is for sure. Like, if you don't like someone, I don't get why you're not just instantly hitting that block button and moving on. It is such a big world out there, even among VTubers. You don't have to be paying attention to someone you don't like. Either block them or mute them. For example, if you don't like me, you can block me, right? And then Twitter has features to mute certain words. So if you don't like, me, mute the word rev. If you don't like something like lollies, mute the term lolly, and so on and so forth. And you know what? You'll find out on Twitter, your experience will change drastically when you actually take proactive steps to mute and avoid things you don't like. It's that simple, but people don't want to take the steps because talking about people and obsessing over them is just typical of a scene that's much like high school drama. This one is a hot take where apparently they lost followers, and I'm not surprised. It says, I like idol culture in VTubing. I think it's an important root of the culture people like to shit on. So I 100% agree that idol culture is good in VTubing. And that is not a full endorsement of idol culture. Of course, there is toxic aspects. I think the purity type requirements of idol culture are completely outdated and should be weeded out strongly from anything to do with VTubers. But I think there's a lot of positives of idol culture that are at the roots of why VTubing became so successful. I mean, look at LoIi. They run it like an idol company. And guess what? It works very well. It's not for everyone, but it makes some very good content. And I enjoy companies and VTubers who are modeled after idol and idol culture. And I think it's just hilarious to me when I see Western VTubers very upset about idol culture, saying it needs to be stomped out and there's nothing good about it. And yet they're saying things like, hey, come to my debut stream. Oh my God, please use my Oshi marks. They use the terminology and aspects of idol culture every single day, and they don't even know it because they don't know anything about the roots of VTubing and idol culture. So this relates to that, saying there is no culture. VTubing isn't ingrained in anime/Japanese culture. The concept is just streaming with an avatar. This one just moves elaborately. People have been doing it for years. Yeah, you know I disagree with this heavily. There is a culture, and it is rooted in idol culture. It's rooted in anime, and it's rooted in Japanese culture. That is where it all came from, and it is more than just putting an avatar on the screen. That is something that has been done for a long time. The appeal is that you are using an anime character. That is not just some random thing on a screen. It is an anime character that is a product of that related culture. These things, there's no one root of VTubing culture but there's many different ones in anime, in Japanese culture, in idol culture. Those are all big factors, and that's the problem with Western VTubers. They don't understand those roots, and they don't appreciate them. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but VTubing and having a VTuber model has become just a vehicle for people to stream and get popularity, because it is a trend to get a VTuber model. It makes things a lot easier. And people think that they just put on this VTuber model, that they know everything about the culture. And it's become so accepted to just have a VTuber model and not like VTubers, not like anime, and that's okay. Well, no, it's not really okay, because these same people expect all of the related activities and cultures to revolve around them when they don't even understand the roots of the culture they're trying to participate in. So here's our favorite rat coming back. We just talked about her a couple days ago, saying LoIi VTubers should be able to exist in the same space and create content without harassment, just like other VTubers. Also, pre-debut VTubers need to have some content under their belt before they consider to start shitting on the VTuber scene, which is very true. That last one is pretty self-explanatory. You should actually have content under your belt and know a thing or two before you start criticizing other VTubers in the scene itself. But the thing I want to point out here is just the complete irony of LoIi VTubers like this being harassed in mass recently, like worse than normal, by people who are trying to create safe spaces and things like that, because, oh, the LoIi VTuber makes me uncomfortable, literal pedo bait, this and that. You know, besides the ignorance of not even understanding what LoIi is or what any of these things are before they start labeling people pedos over this kind of stuff, their tactic of making a safe space involves harassing other people and being absolutely toxic and terrible people. And in these cases, these are people who just want to mind their own business. LoIi VTubers and related themes, including LoLiCon, things like that, have been a part of VTuber culture since its inception. It is not a secret, and unfortunately, people just don't want to accept that because they think it's ew, icky, gross. And you know what? No one's asking you to champion these things or to like them, but they're there, and you shouldn't be trying to oust people from an established community for principles that are always okay until recent times. And I think when it comes to LoLi VTubers, the number one thing they want is to be left alone. That's it. They just want to be left alone. And it has gotten so bad, you can just openly hate these people and harass them and direct harassment campaigns against them, and you'll get cheered on by many different VTubers. And it's sad. And it just shows the hypocrisy of how people value treating one another. As long as it suits their interest, it's no hold barred. So this is a good point. Low numbers does not equal bad content. So pretty self-explanatory. You know, one thing we'll talk about later in this video is that numbers do matter. Like it is important. Numbers matter. They reflect things, and they're important. Especially if you want to be a person who's VTubing as a part of a career or a full-time career, it is important. Numbers do matter. But low numbers do not equal bad content. I have seen plenty of VTubers with like 50 to 100 viewers who are extremely talented and deserve a lot more. And by the way, 50 to 100 is a very good view count. I don't know why people consider things like that low, but in the grand scheme where some of the most known VTubers are streaming in front of thousands of concurrent viewers, that may seem like a lot less, but it doesn't make their content bad. I think that's something that people will always feel bad about having low numbers. It's just a human condition, but that doesn't mean you have bad content. A lot of success in content creation comes from luck, catching a couple lucky breaks, and also time. It just takes time to grow, and that's really all there is to it. So this one right here is a very important point. So having an editor is a luxury, and you are paying for a service. Begging editors to edit your clips for free and saying, I need it for growth, come on, or I'm a huge VTuber, it'll help your growth, is degen behavior. Yes. So number one, thinking just because you're a big VTuber, you can just push people around and give you free editing for their exposure is completely narcissistic, and it's not going to help them. The same way that people who are small VTubers can't just get edited clips for free. It is a luxury. A luxury like any other luxury, is expensive. It is very expensive to have an editor. So if you're a VTuber and let's say you have like a clip compilation and you want this editor to make a compilation of your streaming clips and add in all kinds of funny edits and things like that, it's a lot of work. For even like an 8-minute video, it's going to be a lot of work. And at minimum, you're going to be looking at like 50, 60, 70, $100 to edit an 8-minute video. I got news for you people. 95% of these VTubers are not going to get their money back that they're going to pay this editor. I'm not trying to step on the toes of editors and say no one use an editor, but you have to be honest with yourself. Are you going to make that money back? I mean, let's say you spend $100 to edit an 8-minute video. You're going to have to make like 20 to 50,000 views on that video to make your money back. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but not a lot of VTubers can pull that off. That is a huge amount of views to make up money like that. And I get the aspect of, oh, well, it's not just the ad revenue it generates, but also it introduces your stream to people and so on and so forth. But I don't think that's as lucrative as people think. I am not saying that making videos and clips and compilations is a bad thing. I think it's a great thing for exposure, but you might have to take care of that yourself before you pay an editor. It is a luxury. It is expensive. And you have to be honest with yourself and think, is this going to pay out for me? Or am I just going to lose money? Because for most smaller VTubers, your compilations and videos are going to be viewed by 90% of your audience that's going to be already aware of who you are. You're not going to get a huge new exposure. It's just the reality of the situation. So you have to think very carefully if this is the best thing for you. So this one right here, I'm glad to see that this is becoming a more supported take. VTubers make being horny their only personality trait are annoying. Yes, they're very annoying. It is insufferable. Okay, like, I get it, right? Sex sells, it always will. But, and all these things are subjective. One man's humor is another man's boredom. But man, I don't know how people don't get bored of, like, people whose entire 100% of their personality is being horny. It is so tiresome. And I remember, like, this take, I made, like, similar takes 2 years ago, and I was burned at the stake for saying stuff like this as being, like, sexist and, like, a prude. But I think people are finally starting to catch up that this stuff is annoying in mass. And if you want to have, I mean, being horny and being like a LoIi is fine. But when it's 100% of everything you do and the only reason you're interesting, it's annoying. I don't think that's really that crazy to say. And this is related to that, though. Like I said, if you want to be a LoIi, fine. And it's important to say stuff like this. If a VTuber says their space is 18 plus, y'all minors have no right to complain about stuff you shouldn't even be looking at in the first place. Some of the biggest outrage involving not safe for work content is from minors. That is like the biggest source of complaints about not safe for work content. It is insane. They shouldn't be there. Junior, listen to me. You shouldn't be there talking about this stuff. You, by definition, should not be engaging in this content, especially when the VTuber says their space is 18 plus. You shouldn't be there. You shouldn't be consuming it, and therefore you shouldn't be complaining about it. Stay in your sandbox. Go play with some toys or something. Like, this is not your space to feel comfortable talking about sexual things. You have no place. This should go without saying, but it is a big issue on Twitter. The constant drama in this community is exhausting. Y'all need to sit down, do some research on your own, and use your brain, especially since not every fight is yours to partake in. And, cease the damn clout chasing, plus not every problem needs to be so inflated. Calm down. And I couldn't agree more, the drama is exhausting. I am very exhausted from covering all of this stuff. But it's never ending, and it's important to talk about when it is happening. But the most basic research and nuanced thought on most of these drama-related topics will completely change how some of these people view these things. Like, people will jump the bandwagon on a topic they have no idea about for clout. It's so obvious, and all it does is create more infighting and drama, and it's bad. And it's unfortunately the feedback loop says, hey, talking about these things is good for attention and more followers and things like that, without realizing the community doesn't like seeing their favorite VTuber constantly arguing or getting into political topics all the time or talking about deep stuff that has nothing to do with their actual content they're making. And this is related to it. Ignoring discourse in the VTuber community doesn't make you a better person. It makes you complacent to those actively trying to make it worse for everyone. And I completely disagree. I feel like this is content creation. If you want to engage in discourse, that is fine. If you want to use your platform to do that, no one's stopping you. But I'm going to tell you it's going to alienate a lot of your viewers. And again, if you're okay with that, fine. But most people are there for entertainment, not to hear about certain discourse that is controversial, that is involved with real world themes. Like, look at me. Who wants to hear my opinion on some big political issue? What is my qualification? What is the qualification of all these VTubers who don't even know how to file their own taxes? And they're supposed to be telling you some nuanced opinion about serious stuff, and I don't want to hear their opinion. You know, they're allowed to do it, but I don't think they're any more qualified than the average person. And having a big platform, they need to think a little harder before they engage in serious discourse. I think it's fair to ask that you don't just start blurting out things because you feel some sort of entitlement to do so because it makes you complacent. You know, it is perfectly valid to want to talk about political things, just as it is valid to not want to talk about those things. Go create a personal account. Talk there. Why do you got to do it on your page you make content on? I don't understand. There should never be an obligation to talk about anything. Just like you have the right to make whatever content you want, same applies to what you talk about. It's your content. It should be what you want to do. That's the whole point of VTubing. Being anything you want to be. Making any type of content that you want. So, and, you know, in the related discourse, you end up with things like this. I just don't understand. There is a certain sect of people. There's 111 likes on this, but this is divisive. And it's why do you need to say this? Why does gender identity really even matter in the first place when you're a VTuber? This is about content you make. It's great to be proud of who you are and what you stand for, but why do you need to disparage other people? You're alienating countless people with tweets like this. I don't care how many likes you get. You're alienating potential viewers, and it makes no sense to me. This is why things get so toxic. It becomes an us versus them. It's just weird. Here's another one. I mean, talking about this type of stuff. If you make actual 18 plus not safe for work content with a childlike avatar, you are partaking in the pedo culture in the VTubing community, and no excuses but my avatar is 500,000 years old will ever be valid. First of all, as I always say, no one ever makes the argument that the character is 500,000 years old, so it doesn't matter. Nobody but aunties ever make these arguments. But the thing is, I would be more inclined to take these things seriously if it wasn't for the fact that these people can't even understand what they're mad about in the first place. I guarantee if I ask this person or anyone else who's outraged over these sorts of takes, what's the definition of LoIi? They don't know. They have no idea. They'll say it's underage, wrong, it's a body type, has nothing to do with age. And this whole childlike avatar, what exactly does that mean? Because earlier today I saw a VTuber who is by all definitions a dommy mommy type VTuber with big hunkabalunkas, getting canceled and called pedo bait and childlike because she had a cute uniform on. What does childlike even mean? And again, sorry to burst your bubble, they're drawings. The VTuber model is not a real person. There's a real person behind it, but the model is not a real person. If you don't like these things, just block them and move on. I don't understand. And if you think there's a pedo culture in the VTubing community, why are you a part of it? If you think there's an actual pedo culture to the medium, what are you doing participating in it? That's the biggest irony of me. People also say it's so ingrained, it's all over the place. Why are you here? Why are you here if you actually believe that? Do you not hear how insane that is? But we've seen how these justifications are used to attack anyone for their model if it's slightly petite or they have a slightly high voice, oh, they're childlike, it's okay to harass them. It's just all an excuse for bullying. That's all it is at the end of the day, when these people could just avoid these things that make them uncomfortable. It's okay and normal to feel sad or envious about other VTubers' success. I sure as hell do. It's what you do with those feelings and how you let them manifest that matter. Don't weaponize them to be spiteful, but try to craft them into motivation to push yourself harder and learn. I think this is great advice. That is a human condition to feel jealous. Every single person feels jealous about their peers at some point, me included. There's always going to be a time where you're going to feel jealous of other people's success, but you need to pause and reflect. It is human to be jealous, but how do you react to that feeling of jealousy? Are you going to bring down others, say that they don't deserve their success? Or are you going to take a moment to pause, appreciate what you got, and maybe say, hey, I got to work a little harder, or maybe I got to work a different way, or there's something I could learn from that person who has more success, or a different type of success, because that's another thing that I think is heavily overlooked, the type of success. You know, for every person that puts all of their effort into streaming, right? It's like they tunnel vision everything into streaming. And some person who's diversified into streaming, uploading YouTube videos, running Patreon, doing commissions, things like that, will look at the person who tunnel visions on Twitch and they'll go, wow, they have more subs than me. I feel inferior. But in reality, you're putting your hard work into different areas. And maybe in the end, you're both the same with your total level of success. So I think it's important to look at things in that sort of a lens where it's not all just so focused on one aspect or one set of numbers or things like that. Take a look around and appreciate all the hard work you're doing and the success you have, and the fact that there's a lot of people who are jealous of you. It's just a line of jealousy that goes up and down, you know, and it's always going to be there, but it's important to react to that jealousy in a positive way or the best way you can. So this one is a very good point. It says, if any weeb supports censorship or certain genre they don't like getting banned or censored or illegal, should not whine when their favorite hobby ends up banned, censored, or illegal. So this is relevant to every single day on Twitter involving VTubers. The biggest topics being lolicon, shotacon, things like that. And I can't tell you how ridiculous people's standards are on this. You know, they'll call people pedos over those things and say it should be illegal and banned and all that stuff, and LoLi VTubers shouldn't be allowed. And then you look at some of the same people who are established content creators in many cases who are openly furries. Like, please, don't be surprised when they ban that icky stuff you don't like and you support it, and then they turn around and ban things that you like because it's icky to them. Like, it's ridiculous. People are so short-sighted and have no self-awareness when it comes to policing other people's interests and hobbies and, in some cases, fetishes and things like that. If you don't like it, leave them alone. Ignore them, block them, do whatever. Don't be so short-sighted that you want to ban something that you personally dislike that'll be turned around and sets a precedent to ban things that you like and other people think are weird. It's really as simple as that. There's no such thing as like a fair censorship here. Like, yeah, extreme, disgusting, illegal things, sure. But the icky, weird stuff, no, that's not justification to ban or make something or want something to be illegal. Toxic positivity is way too common in this community. Numbers do matter. Views/viewers do matter. It's normal to worry about these things as they pertain to your success. Absolutely. Numbers do matter, especially if you want to do this as a career. Numbers are very important. And you know what? Even when this is just a hobby or something you do for fun, like myself included, when YouTube was just a hobby for me, yeah, numbers were important. It's a reflection of success. It doesn't always mean that if you're gaining or losing, that you're failing or succeeding. It's not always reflective. There's so much more that goes into it. I mean, you're not even talking about things like the algorithm and outside forces like that. But the numbers do matter, and people pay attention to them. And it's going to be turbulent. Like, the biggest thing that you have to be, if you want to be a content creator, is you have to have a lot of tenacity. Okay? Like, there's going to be so many ups and downs that you have to be able to deal with the lows and not get too happy with the highs. You have to know things are going to level out overall. And for every bad week, there's probably going to be a good week and vice versa. But the numbers are something that are inevitable. You're going to pay attention to numbers, and that's the way it is. And people shouldn't be shamed for having a reaction to those things. It doesn't make it okay to be a snob about them, but everyone's paying attention to them. Like, don't act like numbers don't matter. Like, yeah, there's a difference between streaming in front of 10 people versus 200 and 1,000. Like, yeah, these numbers matter and they mean something, and it's okay to talk about that every once in a while. This one was just funny. It vexes me when people who aren't doctors advertise their VTuber as one. We're coming off a pandemic where so much mistrust has been sown between the public and medicine, and cosplaying our profession without understanding the gravitas of the degree we carry is incredibly damaging. I'm going to go on a limb and say this is a bit of an overreaction. If someone's going out there and claiming that they are a medical doctor with a license and giving advice and LARPing that far, yeah, that's a crime. That's wrong. But if someone's like role-playing as a certain profession and just having fun with that, I don't think it's that deep. But I don't know. I just thought this one was funny. 80% of big streamers do not actually care about you. They don't know you and never will. You are in fact a number to them. You aren't their friend and they don't care if you support them or not. At the end of the day, this is their career and money and profit comes first. That was depressing. Well, that is not the case. So obviously there's greedy big streamers, right? Of course. But when you're someone as big as someone like from LoIi, right? If you're Gargura streaming, it is impossible to sit there and read every comment in your chat. It is flying. Besides reading some super chats and things like that, big streamers like that, it's a completely different experience. It's funny how when you have 10,000 viewers, the streaming experience is much like someone with 0 viewers. Basically, you're sitting there narrating what you're doing because you can't keep up with the chat. There's just no way. And that's not because they don't care. It's just a necessity. It's the only way it really works. I think they do really care, but the way they have to perform their streams, it's a little less personal. I love the fact that as someone who streams in front of a smaller audience, I can actually read every single message in my chat. I like that. It's really important to me, and it makes my streams fun. But like, that's not the reality when you get big. And that doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden a bad person because you can't have that more interpersonal connection with people. And I think it's a little cynical to believe that it's all just about money when eventually they didn't like choose the success to ignore their fans, if that makes any sense. So without artists, VTubers wouldn't exist. But yet there is not enough respect for artists most of the time across the greater VTuber scene. Although VTubers who find some success do have an appreciation for their artists, usually seems correlated though, not casual. So yeah, that is often overlooked. There is no VTuber scene without artists. They are the backbone of everything. The models, the arts, every aspect is propped up by artists. So people who just don't appreciate artists and treat their own artists poorly and don't give them credit and things like that are really just doing themselves and the scene a big disservice. And I think this one just goes without saying. Just appreciate the artists who make all of this happen. Some VTubers gotta learn the difference between getting hates and getting criticism. Someone disagreeing with you or expressing their disappointment isn't hate. So on its face, this is right. Of course, there are people who get valid criticism and immediately think of it as hate. That happens all the time. But I've also seen what people, especially recently, consider criticism, where that criticism involves harassing people and name calling and generally toxic behavior. We don't know if that's what this person is referring to, of course, but I'm just pointing that out. That excuse of it's criticism, not hate, has been used to harass a lot of people. But there is, yes, a very big difference between general hate and getting criticism. So it's a difficult topic, right? It's been misused and miscategorized by a lot of people. Bottom jokes aren't funny. If your whole sense of humor is bullying someone into being submissive, that's weird behavior. Yeah, it is Very weird. I don't know why that's become a product of VTubers who are horny 24/7, where bottom and top jokes are public and done with their community and other VTubers, where of course it's their right to do it, but it creates a very weird situation where like sexual roles are being assigned so publicly in such a weird fashion where it gets to a point where I don't understand how these VTubers are like shocked Pikachu face when their community starts saying these things back to them when that's their whole sense of humor. I'm not saying that makes it okay, but like, are you surprised when you're constantly talking about bottom and top and all those types of jokes that your community starts engaging in them too? Super annoying, and it's weird. And like, it's very weird to just call some like stranger on the internet a bottom or a submissive without knowing them. It's very weird. Very weird behavior. And like I said, that's not just VTubers doing it, but their communities doing it to them or thinking it's okay to. It's all just very weird to me. So it's Kyo saying a hot take, saying most VTubers don't do anything to stand out from everyone else and just copy what has worked for others in the past. A hot take indeed. But it's true. I think trends are a huge thing. I think people look around and see what works for other people and they copy it, whether it's literally just a copy and pasted version of what the other person's doing or a spin-off of what they're doing. Everyone pays attention to what other people are doing. Everything from the games they play, from the types of streams they do, the titles, the tags, the design of their models, their rigging, everything is piggybacking off of other people who had success doing something else, right? I think that's a good point, and it makes people feel insecure because they feel like they hear this and they're like, oh, you think I'm not original? No, I think it's taking aspects from other people and seeing what works and what doesn't work is how content creation has always worked. So this is going to be the last one of this video. VTubers and their popularity are being used by IRL streamers and content creators like a TikTok trend. Besides things like stealing the VTuber tag on Twitch, they will either defend or hate on VTubers depending on which way the popularity has shifted that week. Yes, I think there is something very alarming about the VTuber culture being threatened by people who are misusing the clout and attention that comes from using a VTuber model, and they not only engage in the culture by using a VTuber model, but they also despise the culture it comes from and expect it to change to their interests. They want the established culture to change because they think it's weird from the outside trying to come in and invade it. And there's so many things. People will make the excuse, well, they want anonymity. Okay, don't use a VTuber model. Just don't use a cam. Like, you don't have to use a VTuber model. It's very obvious people have used it for clout and they think it'll give them a big boost. People used to be face cammers, for example. And it creates so many problems, and it's alarming that it's so accepted that these people who hate VTubing but use it to boost their popularity aren't called out. It's a real problem. But I'm going to stop there. This was an extremely long video. Oh my god, I just looked. It's 43 minutes long. This is the longest video I've ever made. Too much going on. There's a lot of hot takes, and I really appreciate the listen here. I know it was a staggering amount of time, but yeah. Please let me know all of your thoughts about these VTuber hot takes in the comment section down below. I appreciate the listen, everyone, and I will see you next time.